are again. Obviously no Sue here, so apologies. It is so late at night. I have not been getting home from work on time to put the suit on and actually have good lighting, so sorry. But today we are going to talk about best mascot. What do I mean by that? So in the anime community, there's this idea of best girl. So when you're watching like a harem show or really any anime that has multiple female characters, most viewers will pick best girl, their favorite girl, the best girl in the series that they feel attracted to or otherwise enamored with. So I thought, why not flip the script a bit and do best mascot? I'm not going to do best furry for obvious reasons, because A, the comments would be a war zone, and B, given the not as recent events but still equally hilarious past occurrences of certain mascots garnering social media attention, we'll get into that, I thought, why not get a little bit trashier than usual and go into which mascot is best mascot. So here we go. Let's find best mascot. Let's kick things off proper with the original cool cat. No shade. Originally envisioned in 1986, Chester Cheetah was the massive muzzled cheetah mascot that many of us grew up with if we happened to be a little bit addicted to electric orange corn crisps that were covered in what might be described as cheese, but to be honest, some of us still don't really know. Now, this pretty edgy little cheetah character that many of us came to know and love hasn't really changed as much as you'd think. From 1986 to 2003, Chester was mainly drawn through traditional animation. He was sly, he was suave, and he was the bad boy that everyone wanted to get to know. And it was completely acceptable to look like an orange Cheeto had blown up on your face from all the Cheetos you would gorge as a result of loving his character. He's definitely a top contender for best mascot, although admittedly we're going to have to deduct some points from when he went to CGI, because while in 2003 it was a great idea, it definitely got a little weird. Now in 2008 we had the Orange Underground redesign, which was kind of interesting, and he looked a bit like a puppet, and it looked as if he was slightly computer generated. It was a very confusing time. But where Chester Cheetah really scores his mark is understanding the youth culture of the time and really very rarely missing a beat. There have been several incidents of Chester Cheetah stepping up when no other furry mascot would. In the incidents of Tony the Tiger, who we'll get to in a minute, he actually accepted furries and completely took our most cringy tweets all in stride like a champ. He even offered a hilariously ridiculous offering online of different Cheeto products such as bronzer, slippers, I think even a bathrobe. He's the essential cool kid of this lineup, and he's definitely a very strong entry into best mascot. Now, one kind of company you wouldn't really expect to have a furry mascot, at least not initially, is insurance. It's kind of boring. I mean, insuring things? How can that be made more interesting by a furry mascot? Well, enter the Geico Gecko. Now, while Geico's had a pretty wild range of different sponsors, none have had the staying power of the Geico Gecko. It's also fun to say, so that probably helped. They'd previously had Maxwell the Pig, they'd even had the Cavemen, they had a bunch of other very interesting mascots, but the Geico Gecko has lasting potential. The very polite, timid, shy little gecko that we see in so many commercials is so relatable. I live in New York, and the little piece he did about living in a New York apartment is very relatable, although a bit exaggerated. One of the most interesting thing about the Geico Gecko is it first made its appearance in a 2000 television season and pretty much exploded from there. No other mascot that they'd really ever had such a lasting staying power. He's been in all kinds of crazy different marketing campaigns, and he's even endured past the Civilized Caveman. Yes, the Civilized Caveman was a 2004 entry to diversify Geico's mascots, and it never quite stuck. But the reason that we love the Geico Gecko, even though we still don't quite know what his name is just how polite and nice and good-natured he is, and for scalies everywhere, he's the friendly little anthropomorphic gecko that reminds you that you could save a bit percent on car insurance. Admittedly, I didn't really get the jingle down, probably because I'm furry, and rather than paying attention to the jingle, I was just admiring a cute gecko. Whoops, so sue me. Now this one is for our friends across the pond, and some of us US and Canadian people may not have any idea who this mascot is, but ladies and gentlemen, Churchill the dog, the official mascot of another insurance company. Churchill Insurance actually needed a mascot in 1994 to bolster pride and a bit more identity within the company, so sure enough, they brought on none other than a bulldog. A very, very British dog breed, if there's ever been one. Now, whether that's actually accurate as the most popular dog breed, I'm not going to speak to, but generally it's thought of as a very British dog. So, a staff competition essentially led to the adoption of a physical bulldog. The bulldog pretty much was looked up to as a really great team player for the team, good at boosting morale, and the original bulldog's actual name was Lucas. But obviously, Lucas the dog is not something that's gonna really stick with consumers when they're thinking of Churchill Insurance, so they decided on the name Churchill, essentially because of their company and also because of Winston Churchill and his very rich history. So while it's not the biggest mascot out there, it's a mascot that has some pretty cute beginnings. They actually adopted a dog, and it was a very British powerful symbol. And in 2004, they actually had a Churchill hot air balloon. It was so cute. Oh my god. It was 34 meters by 24 meters high, and it could actually accommodate 50,000 real bulldogs. Oh man, it was crazy. While Churchill's not really the biggest contender on this list, because admittedly I didn't really know that much about him until researching for this particular video, he deserves a good, honest mention because, gosh darn it, any mascot that is brought into the corporate sphere because someone's actually adopted a dog and given them a second chance, they get my pass. So Churchill, you are a solid entry here, even though you probably won't win. My nemesis, we meet again. Tony the tiger has an interesting background with furries from more recent events. While the great tiger has been with Kellogg's since 1952, he had a bit of a tiff with the furry community. Now, we can admittedly be kind of trash. A lot. And we can do things that are pretty trash and pretty cringe, but you wouldn't necessarily expect your average mascot to really do much about it. Typically, as someone who works in social media, when you do get those hate-spew comments, the best thing to do, unless they're actually voicing a complaint about your product, is to ignore it. So if someone's just doing a spew fest of profanities in a tweet to you, they're probably having a very bad day, and you might as well just let them have their moment. But Tony the Tiger, who was the cartoon mascot for Kellogg's Frosted Flakes, had a bit of a different incident. But let's get into his early history. In 1951, Eugene Kolke, an accomplished graphic artist and art director for Leo Burnett, basically sketched a character for a contest. This character eventually became Tony the Tiger and caught on very quickly. In 1958, Tony appeared on Kellogg's cereal boxes for the first time with Hanna-Barbera characters such as Huckleberry Hound and Snagglepuss. If you don't know who those are, that's okay. You're probably not old, so good for you. Tony began to get more human characteristics in the 1970s, and he was given an Italian-American nationality, which is interesting because before then you hadn't really seen any characters intentionally given an accent for any particular reason, at least not for a positive reason. I'm sure there were plenty of negative ones. In 1974, he was deemed Tiger of the Year, and he kind of took off in a very, very big way. The longtime voice of Tony, Thurl Ravenscroft, which is a bangin' name, by the way, actually did pass away in 2005 and was eventually replaced by Lee Marshall, who was our beloved Tony the Tiger until 2014 when cancer sadly took him away from us. Since then, he's been voiced by a Californian-born British actor, say that 3 times fast, by the name of Tom Clark Hill. And unsurprisingly, the UK rock song Eye of the Tiger has usually been used in conjunction with Tony, which I don't particularly like. I think that song needs to be appreciated on its own, but what do I know? I'm not a cereal mascot. I have mixed feelings on Tony, and the reasons I have mixed feelings on Tony stem from a whole host of reasons. Something you may not know about me is I actually grew up in a Frito-Lay and not a Kellogg's-centric family. I actually had people in my family that worked under Frito-Lay and Pepsi. I did not have a strong connection to Kellogg's because a lot of the cereals were very sugary. So I didn't really engage with Tony the Tiger that much as a kid. Did I think he was great? Not really. I was a little more swayed by Toucan Sam, who admittedly has kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. I liked the Twix Rabbit, but also kind of went to the uncanny valley of cereal mascots that just never quite stay. And if you had family that bought the all-natural organic stuff, you probably remember generic koala from your organic cereal. But I mostly grew up with Count Chocula and Toucan Sam and Fruit Loops and all that lovely stuff, and the Cookie Monster kind of cereals. I didn't really engage with Tony that much. And as I got older, I felt that some of his marketing began to skew so polarizingly young that I was having a really hard time just watching the ads at all and taking interest whatsoever. So naturally, when we had the great furry tiff between Chester and Tony, which was not really perpetrated by either one, it was a response to something happening, I was a little surprised by how certain people reacted. As I mentioned in Chester's segment, there was an incident that happened, and it was pretty interesting the way both mascots reacted. Now, something I called out for Chester is he's never really lost stride with the times, whereas Tony has been since inception the good boy, basically serving as a role model for kids. So how does this play out when you have 2 horrified social media managers trying to field the lewd ridiculousness of furries on the internet? Interestingly, there are a bunch of interesting raunchy tweets. I'm not gonna repeat them, but you could just look up any article on it and there are just screenshots for days. But it was interesting because the way that Tony responded was something you'd probably see with maybe your mom or an older person on the social media platform who doesn't really realize that reacting is not always the best way to deal with things. Let me give you an example. So, if your mom uses the internet and goes onto YouTube and makes a video and someone tells her to go kill herself, what you probably should do is just either leave the comment if you don't care, delete it if you don't want to look at it, and move on with your day. If you decide to leave a giant paragraph on that comment, it's gonna come back to bite you in the butt. Similarly on Twitter, if you start getting tweeted with "Yiff me daddy" from 500,000 furries on the internet just trying to poke some fun, while it may look a little bit sketchy to investors and other people that like to come to your brand for child-friendly material, there's really not much you can do about it. It's not like Facebook where you can delete the comments, or YouTube where you can delete the comments, or Instagram where you can delete the comments. So essentially what Tony the Tiger did was went on a rampage of blocking every furry that he could find. Something that probably your mom would do. But what Chester did was he chose to reply and entertainingly poke fun at the unbelievably cringy things that we had to say in his general direction. And in this instance, Chester won. Chester won on a large scale. People were talking about it outside of the furry community and kind of applauding his ability to get with the times, whereas Tony, kind of like your dad horrified at a barbecue that you've come home in a furry outfit, reacted, power blocked, and was trying to do damage control, and blocking furries really just made it worse. We like to be heard. So we got louder and louder and louder until it was a national news story. So since we've gone over all of that, where do I stand with Tony? Tony is a great contender if you are the kind of person that appreciates the wholesome kind of mascot that is something you could show your kid, but if you took him to a concert, probably wouldn't be able to name half the people on stage. He's kind of like your doofy dad, whereas Chester is the cool dad that knows the current music you're listening to and knows what Yeezys are and can keep up with the times. So while Tony is a great mascot with some pretty rich history, he's really not as strong a contender here for pretty obvious reasons. So the last mascot we're going to get into is Foxy Bingo, who again is probably a little more well-known across the pond. Now, Foxy Bingo as a company started up in 2005. It's literally just a place where you can play online bingo. Initially, it had about 40 rooms, and, you know, they had weekly jackpots, just your standard, average online bingo spot. But a little bit later on, we started to see a little closer tie to the actual marketing. Initially, the character of Foxy Bingo started as a special effects makeup. Now, who exactly started it is still up to speculation. I haven't been able to find out the original Foxy Bingo cosplayer, I think would be the correct term here. But a little bit later on, we started to see a very different Foxy Bingo that looked a bit more like us. Now, it's not entirely clear when the actual Foxy fursuit, dare we say, came into existence, but a little bit later on into their history, Foxy Bingo started using what very much looked like a fursuit. It looked very, very fursuit-like. It had animatronics in the head, it had very expressive reactions, and it was part of a bigger marketing campaign where Foxy Bingo was actually a person and was this very suave fox. And it was a little bit interesting for us furries to take in because people seemed to really like Foxy Bingo, despite the fact that he looked very, very similar to furries that were generally not well regarded on the internet. Now, this eventually spiraled into a much more CGI Foxy Bingo a little bit later on. Again, really hard to confirm when it started happening. And we kind of lost more of that homemade feel of what we really regarded as a fursuit. Unfortunately, Foxy Bingo Online kind of ruined the magic in a big way for us by starting a campaign with the Foxy Bingo suit that we loved to pieces being used as a marketing tool in a way that felt a little bit disingenuous. They essentially picked Heather Graham to be the face of Foxy out of suit. And while there is absolutely nothing wrong with a female actress portraying a male fursuited character, I guess in this case Mascot, since we're going to be technical here, one thing in our community that's not particularly appreciated is outright ruining the magic, and one quick look at the Foxy Bingo webpage as it stands currently just has magic ruining everywhere. You can see Heather jokingly wearing the fursuit head as a hat, showing multiple pictures of her out of suits, and it's sad. Because I like Heather Graham as an actress, and you know, Foxy Bingo is a really interesting mascot for a kind of boring company. But the actress who was known for The Hangover and Austin Powers ruined the magic in a way that almost fully disqualifies Foxy from this list as a potential winner, because the Foxy Bingo that I found very interesting and very edgy and brought me back to those happy memories of Chester the Cheetah, and feeling like this character actually related to me in some way, I'm reminded again that this is essentially just a marketing tool for a company. And Foxy, as amazing as his animatronics were and as sick as his dance moves were, was never really a dedicated mascot for the company, and as a result isn't really a strong entry here, despite how gosh darn beautiful the actual mascot suit was. Well, I'm kind of biased here, but as you might have guessed, Chester Cheetah is my pick for best mascot. Why? Because even though he represents a junk food brand, he also represents a character we don't see a whole bunch in marketing in general. He's literally a cool cat, he keeps with the times, and even though some of his marketing campaigns are a little weird, he never really loses stride. He hasn't felt the need to jump on the bandwagon train of saying hashtag this or hashtag that, and he actually is very emblematic of every time period he's resided in. He's interesting, cool, he knows the cool lingo that you have to explain to your mom, and he's down with furries. He can take the most disgusting cringe we throw at him in stride, and without having to seem like a terrified dad using Twitter for the first time like Tony. Unlike Churchill, he's actually very widely recognized, not just in America, and unlike Foxy Bingo, he has never ruined the magic, even though occasionally sometimes the magic was a little much. I'm looking at you, CGI Chester. But for best mascot in this particular lineup, I would say Chester Cheetah is best mascot.
Well, hello! Long time no see, you guys. So as you can tell, I had a very extended spa month where I got some very, very nice brushing for weeks on end and some very, very good spot cleaning so that I can look perfectly camera ready and ready to go for you guys. Sorry it took so long, but hopefully it won't take that long the next time, because this time around I actually found a better way of cleaning my head that doesn't take so darn long. So that should help in the future. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video about which mascot is best mascot. And I know there is definitely a huge group of mascots I did not include in this, so please, please, please Tell me what mascots you wish had been in this and who you think should be best mascot. All right.